taking a little bit longer for editing and gathering clips and all of that stuff. And sometimes being a grandma and a wife and things take precedence. So things have been a little on the busy side. But I'll give you a couple of quick updates though, while I'm going from one place to the other. So some interesting thoughts on Lori's case. Of course, Lori Vallow Daybell, the state rested. She kind of basically rested, but she still has to rest in front of the jury, which leaves open a teeny tiny possibility of her reneging on that and saying that she wants to testify after all or bring forth evidence after all, which would screw things up because on Thursday the jury was not there. They still had court with Lori and Trina K, the prosecutor, going over all of the jury instructions, which would have to be completely redone and decide to testify after all, which would be her constitutional right. I don't think she will because she likes to be in control, and I think that by not officially resting, this is her way of being in control. She can drag things out. She can have the spotlight on her that much longer, but I don't think she'll put herself in a position to be cross-examined by Trina K. I don't see that happening again because she does not want to be out of control. That is my guess. That said, so here's some just summary thoughts, questions I've seen online, and some have been posed to me, and insights that I've gained from other creators, including some people who know what they're talking about, Dr. John, Peter from the lawyer, and others. So the evidence will show. And some people were like, why did she do that? That just shows she's not actually a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. It sounds actually to me that that was her way of getting her version of the story in, because if she tried to say things that weren't, that she didn't plan to prove as evidence, she would not be able to say those things in her opening statement. They would be considered testimony, and she can't do that when you're acting as a lawyer. Lawyers can't testify in the process of a proceeding. So by saying the evidence will show, she's allowed to say, essentially, she's kind of testifying within those rules. If that makes sense. So that's one likely possibility. She probably got that advice from her counsel that's her assisting her. People have asked why certain things weren't admitted into evidence. Why didn't the state show this or that? And some of them I'm annoyed by. Others I completely understand. I think Trina K was focused, trying to make this the cleanest possible case, because as we know, the whole Daybell case is so convoluted. I had a family member ask me about a year ago to give me the nutshell version, and I'm like, oh, dude, how do I do that? And then as I was giving him the nutshell version, he would ask questions, and I'm like, okay, that's a 20-minute tangent. You want me to answer that? Because I will. But she wanted to keep Chad out of it, so she kept it focused on Arizona. Trina K did a great job there, and the biggest reason there is that the more they mentioned Chad, the more that she, as the defense, could blame the jury, could say, well, maybe Chad was the ringleader, and the one that's actually responsible for Charles's death. Maybe she didn't know. So the more we keep Chad out, the more the focus is just on Lori and her conspiracy. So that's why we didn't hear things like Chad's call to the funeral home about his supposed uncle, where he spelled his own name wrong because he realized that giving his own name was dumb. Remember, he said Chad Daybell, Dabal, and making up names for, anyway. Oh, and I'm in Iowa. Yep, listen to that phone call. I'll see if I can link to it at some point. It's hilarious because he's so stupid where you can tell he's using one of his burner phones. It's like, what number are you calling from in case we get disconnected? And he's like, I don't know. Just let me check. Because he didn't know his own number because it was a burner. But no, so because Chad is in prison and on death row and all of that, they would not be able to bring him in to testify even if they wanted to. And they wouldn't want to. So then what about the body cam footage? That's the one that bothers me the most that they did bring in. Charles himself on body cam saying that he is afraid for his life. His wife is threatening his life. And the police saying, well, what did she actually say? And then when he was spoke for, they're like, well, that's not technically an actual threat. And of course, he knew it was. And I've heard people say that they couldn't bring that in because it would be hearsay because Charles is dead. And yes, there are exceptions to hearsay, and they could have argued them, but she opted not to because of hearsay. Now, I understand that, and yet I'm thinking, why didn't they have any of the police that were present then during that body cam testify about those incidents? And if they testified, it's what they observed, that they heard, and they said, and what they would be the witnesses, right? And they could verify that yes, that's my body cam. And at least, even if they don't show the video, they could have asked those cops what was in them or those events. So I think they could have gotten that in, and that would have helped. And then another thing that I'm pretty sure they did not bring in because, again, of hearsay issues, Charles is literally not here. That's why we can't bring him in. But I think he could have gotten around it. But it were the two calls that Charles made to the insurance company when he was trying to change the beneficiary. And suddenly, I mean, this is his business, right? He does insurance. He's the most policy holder and the agent because he bought it himself for himself. And they couldn't verify his policy and that he was the owner because he could not provide a password that he did not put on the account. And so you hear him getting very upset, and he even apologizes to the person on the other end of the phone, saying, I know you're doing your job, but my wife must have gotten in here. This is fraud. You need to do an investigation. How do I get this changed back? How do I get this case opened as fraud? Because I've got to change the beneficiary to my sister. And then he says, for my special needs son, I need to do this for my special needs son because my soon-to-be ex-wife is causing these problems and she is committing this fraud. And they could have gotten that in. Now, maybe they couldn't have played the whole thing, but here's the thing. Earlier in the trial, they did play some insurance calls that Lori made. And the way they did that is they had the agent on the other end of the phone testify. She was sitting there in the courtroom, and she testified, and then they played the call that she was on with Lori.